Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Hi, this one is going to need a little bit of backstory, because this is a response to a video that was made about one of my videos over a year ago. And I had promised the person who made it that I would make a response to his video, or at least I understood it to be a promise. And so I am fulfilling it. I had warned him it would take a while, and actually it took a lot longer than I expected. This is someone who is very highly critical of my video from a kind of standard internet YouTube atheist perspective, especially of a year ago. And it wasn't a very good video that he had made. And so a friend of mine and I had been talking about response videos, and we're both fans of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And so I had invited him to come over. He's going to come over in a few months originally, and to do the response with me, kind of. The idea being at the time Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, because I had seen a little bit of it and it seemed appropriate to me. Anyway, things didn't work out. He wasn't able to come at that time. So finally, just recently, he visited me. But in the interim, there was Deconverted Man's debate challenge, which I made fun of, and then his response to it, and well, and finally, anyway, long story short, my friend got cold feet, and he didn't want to do it with me after all, and I'll let him explain.
As I believe Christopher's already indicated in his introduction to this video, he's been meaning to do this for quite a while, and the original intention was to have a friend join him in the video. That friend is me. That friend is also opting out, and should probably provide a bit of an explanation why. Right after Christopher started his YouTube channel, we sort of speculated about what his first video response to his channel would be like. Well, I forget exactly which was the very first, but there was a fellow by the name of Deconverted Man who came along. When Deconverted Man first published his video, watched a couple of moments of it, got distracted, meant to go back to it, never did. Eventually, down the line, Christopher suggested, as a bit of fun, we both participate in reacting to this reaction video. Said sure, why not? Wasn't really sure who Deconverted Man was, hadn't watched the video in its entirety, but why not? Again, sort of forgot. And then Christopher published his video responding to Deconverted Man's debate challenge. Heard some of the debate questions. Became a little bit concerned. So I went back and actually watched the video that I was planning on responding to with Christopher. And then went and watched the video that Deconverted Man made as a response to Christopher's video about the debate challenge. We should always consider the argument and not the man, the message and not the messenger. But when it came to Deconverted Man's original video, well, these are old arguments. We've seen them many times before. Nothing particularly new here. Sometimes they were applied well, at least somewhat appropriately. Probably shouldn't say well. Sometimes they were just scattershot. So there's really nothing to see there. I left the man. What I saw in the man was disconcerting. To give a bit of background, when I was younger, I worked with populations, people with special needs, developmental disabilities, emotional issues. And a lot of the mannerisms I saw in them, I saw in this fellow Deconverted Man writ very, very large. Almost to the point of it being ridiculous exaggeration. And I found it very, very disturbing. Just going back to his original response video, Christopher's channel. You look at little things there, the mugging in the camera, and the bizarre non sequitur images. What got me, I think most of all, were the typos in the text overlay. Now we all make mistakes, we all typos and all the rest of it, but these were basic things. You got the sense that a child was writing this. But we know this isn't a child. This man can edit his videos. He's competent in that respect. So it just seemed very bizarre to me. It seemed almost eerie. Something very, very unwholesome was there. So I felt uncomfortable actually addressing someone like that. Now, it's Christopher's contention that deconverted man's this is all affect, that deconverted man is adopting a character, maybe to, play the clown for the audience. Maybe it's a bit of bull baiting. Act ridiculous enough, and you'll provoke possible opponents into engaging in the sort of insults that, would allow one to use the ad hominem fallacy and all the rest of it. I'm not quite sure. But regardless, engaging this man, if I correct in my assertion that there's something seriously wrong with me, it would mean, well, intending a sideshow. If Christopher's right, and this man is a clown not, by virtue of nature, but because he's put on the makeup himself, it would be like visiting the circus. Well, I have no interest in visiting either.
Okay, so I'm on my own. Here's the thing. I'm not going to respond point by point because Deconverted Man's video is 36 minutes long, and it would take hours to respond on a point by point basis. Moreover, a lot of the things I would say would be the same, because a great deal of his video was basically premised on misunderstanding what my video was. He evidently took it to be a video attempting to convince atheists that they should not be atheists. It was nothing of the kind. It was, as I thought was fairly clear, a video talking about a phenomenon that goes on and why it is dishonest. That is, this thing that atheists do and why it is not honest that they do that. I'm looking at a phenomenon. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. It would make as much sense to take I could make a criticism as off the point by taking Deconverted Man's video to be a lawnmower repair tutorial, and then noting, man, this isn't even about lawnmowers. You never mention lawnmowers. This is the world's worst lawnmower repair video. His video was largely about that relevant to my video, as taking his that way would be. There's also, there's a second thing, and this is kind of a minor point just about his video in itself. But a lot of what he said was premised on the idea that he has never seen any evidence for God or any logical arguments for God. The test thing's a little bit silly for reasons I'll get into in a minute. Now, he doesn't, however, offer any evidence for this. And there are two reasons why he should, rather than just expecting us to take his word on it. The first being that all of the universe, everything we interact with, is evidence for its creator. So the world is literally nothing but evidence for God. There is nothing anywhere which is not evidence for God. Now, of course, evidence, as I mentioned in my video on evidence, needs to be interpreted properly. So I understand that atheists do not interpret it as evidence for God, but it is nonetheless evidence for God. The second thing is that it is just wildly implausible that he has, according to him, spent time looking into this question and never come across any of the logically coherent, whatever precisely that's supposed to mean, arguments for God. Now, there are sound arguments for God, which is to say an argument which is both valid and its premises are true. I refer you to many of the arguments St. Thomas uses. There are a bunch of others as well. I think I've seen it class something like there being about 12 really substantially distinct arguments for the existence of God, all of which are valid. I'm not sure whether or not that includes the so-called ontological proof from St. Anselm, which generally, at least, I tend to ascribe to the position described by St. Thomas, that it's a valid argument for God, but the only one who could actually know that the premises are true is God himself. And so it seems a little bit pointless since God already knows that he exists. Anyway, be that as it may. It's all over the place. I mean, people must have heard. It's hard to imagine he's never heard of Descartes' proof for God, that he's never heard of St. Thomas's proofs for God, and so on. Although, granted, Descartes' main proof for, or his best proof for God, is really the proof from contingency and necessity, which you also find in St. Thomas. Though I should reiterate, of course, that a proof, all logical proofs, are not something which wrestles you to the ground until you scream uncle. A proof is a way by which you can know something to be true. It's demonstrating how a particular set of things that are true lead to some other truth. That's what a proof is. You can get off any time. You can see a proof and say just no. So proofs don't force you to do anything. That's not what a proof is. But that said, the one other point I'd like to make is you brought up special pleading. And this is a thing which is often misunderstood by atheists. That special pleading, as I explained in my original video, special pleading is asking that two things which are properly in the same category be treated as if they are in different categories and have different rules applied to them. Special pleading is not saying that something is in a different category and then giving a reason why it is in a different category. That is not special pleading. That is properly understanding things according to what they are. It gave a variety of things, but the trivial example being that a mathematical theorem can never be proved by scientific experimentation, and moreover, scientific theory is never going to be proved like a mathematical theorem. Each of those requires different sorts of proof, and the one simply doesn't work for the other, and the absence of one means nothing. The absence of a scientific experiment verifying a mathematical proof means precisely nothing. The absence of a mathematical proof for a scientific theory that is verified by experiment means absolutely nothing. They're in different categories. God is clearly in a different category than creation, and to try to place them in the same category is the following sort of mistake. Imagine two characters in a book who know that they're in a book and who are arguing about whether or not there is an author who is writing the book. And so the one character says to the other, okay, which words here are the author? I mean, everything else we interact with are words in this book, so clearly the author must be words in this book. Point me to which words in this book are the author, or there is no author. That's the same sort of mistake being made by saying that you should be able to perform a scientific experiment to find God. That is the exact same sort of mistake as saying that two characters in a book should be able to point to which words are the author. It's not doable because they're in different categories. In the same way, you cannot come up with a scientific experiment that proves a mathematical proof. So that's just the thing about special pleading. As I said, I mean, there are a bunch of other elementary mistakes. Most of them either I've addressed just on the subject themselves, and I'll let those things stand, or it just wasn't about the video that I made. Something that briefly comes to mind. If you've seen both videos, and I'll link them in the description, there's a part where I talk about this principle that atheists espouse but don't live, of how you should not believe in anything till somebody spoon feeds you proof that it is the case. And that if you actually took this principle seriously, normal life would break down. And Deconverted Man then went and gave an argument for why you shouldn't apply this principle, and in fact, it was about clothing stores, and how you don't know that the clothing stores sell clothing that will fit you until you go there and find out. You don't sit back and wait for someone to prove it to you. You go investigate the world. And he gave an argument for why you should go and investigate the world and how it's reasonable to do so. His argument wasn't wrong, it was just irrelevant to what I was saying, because I was pointing out that a particular principle shouldn't be applied. He gave an argument for why not to apply it. In a sense, he was really agreeing with me, even though he seemed to be disagreeing with me. And so, the one comment I leave on that is, yeah, good job figuring out why you should go to clothing stores to buy clothing, if you need clothing and have the money, etc. Apply that sort of diligence to the rest of life. Don't just stop. Actually go and investigate. Actually use your reason and apply it. Don't just sit back and say, I'm not going to apply my reason, I need to be spoon-fed. That really is the main objectionable thing to online atheists, is their arguments always amount to spoon-feed me. Except they don't do that in the rest of life, and that's good that they don't do it in the rest of life, because they shouldn't. Go out and be a real human being everywhere. So, I want to end on that note of agreement, that he did actually apply reason to something on his own, rather than waiting to be spoon-fed. So, good job there. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.